The longest Muslim dynasty was that of the Ottomans. They ruled for 700 years. They came to power with military might, but along with the soldiers came a deep appreciation of the arts and culture. The legacy reached its zenith in Istanbul, where the East and West meet. For Muslims like me, Islam is more than a religion. It is a whole way of life. Yes, it is concerned with state and government, but Islam also helps the individual find personal salvation and spiritual peace. That way, he or she can more easily tackle the business of everyday life. While some find salvation through ritual and prayer, others look for different paths. They may express their devotion to God through buildings, paintings, and even music and dance. For the Sufi mystics, the followers of a particularly attractive and open form of Islam, there's special concentration on direct communication with God. And Sufism has particular associations today with Istanbul. The guiding light of Sufism is a medieval poet, Rumi, and his work is flourishing today. Rumi, the 13th century mystic, is the best-selling poet of the United States. His message of universal compassion and acceptance are popular everywhere. He said, "I go to the synagogue, the church and the mosque, and I see the same altar and the same spirit. And here in this former monastery, his devotees of the Mevlevi order still remember him with passion." I feel the revival of interest in Rumi is not only restricted to the West. There's a widespread revival of Sufism in Istanbul and indeed in many other parts of the Muslim world. The Sufis formed themselves into brotherhoods and developed their own mystical ways of knowing God. They became known as dervishes, or seekers of God. Sufis see the unity of God, or Tawheed, in everything and everyone. The whirling dervish dance, the Sema, is a way of releasing a divine love. The Sufi order of the Mevlevis was founded by Rumi's son and his associates. Their successors still practice the Sema today. The spiritual master is seen almost as an embodiment of the patron saint. In their whirling, they attempt to achieve a oneness with God. Orthodox Muslims, of course, frown upon such expressions of piety and reject them as deviants from Islam. The Orthodox belief is that such activity diverts from the worship of God. In Rumi's day, Constantinople, as it was then called, was a Byzantine enclave almost surrounded by Islamic peoples who had moved in from the east. The most vigorous of the invaders were the Seljuks.
The first wave was those of Seljuk Turks, and they established their first state in Iran, today's Iran, and then they invaded Anatolia. In fact, the Islamic Arab conquest paved the way for them, and they introduced a totally new religious, social and economical system.
Seljuk art survives today all over Turkey. These 13th century carpets would have been much prized and widely traded in their day. They were found in a Seljuk mosque in Konya, the town where Rumi is buried. They had lain for centuries, neglected and rotting. It's thought that they were woven specially for the mosque as a gift from the then reigning Sultan. The Seljuks weren't the only Turkish rulers to leave some artistic heritage. These massive doors from a mosque in southeastern Turkey show that skill and craftsmanship had been evident for centuries. The inscription names a ruler from the Zengid dynasty, also in the early 13th century. The Zengids enjoyed a brief independent rule in parts of Iraq and northern Syria. The combination of dragons and lions can often be found in art from that period. Such combinations of powerful animals conveyed an aura of protection over entrances and gateways, keeping out evil spirits. The man who, in 1453, took Constantinople for Islam was Mehmed II, known from then on as Mehmed the Conqueror. His armies breached the city walls and took Constantinople after a 7-week siege. Muslims had been trying to do this since the 7th century. Mehmed saw himself not just as a Muslim emperor, but as the next in a long line of Roman rulers. He rebuilt the city walls and castle. The so-called Golden Gate, now in ruins, is the only Roman relic left today.
Mehmed II and his successors considered themselves as heirs to the Byzantine or Roman Empire. They had their own title of Sultan Rum, that means the ruler of the Roman world or the Sultan of the Rome.
The new Sultan of Rome had his own capital to build. At the heart of his new conquest was Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. Its fame throughout the known world made it a huge trophy for Mehmed.
When he entered the building, of course, he was very much impressed by the space because of its very, very large dome covering a very large basilica. And he immediately wanted to be converted into a mosque. And he even prayed in the mosque 3 days after he conquered the city.
The first and most fundamental changes were the addition of a pulpit called a mimbar and a mihrab, the Muslim prayer niche, the two physical essentials for its conversion to a mosque. But his most critical decision was what to do about the rich Christian mosaics which adorned the Byzantine cathedral. Muslims considered the depiction of people in any religious context as a sort of idol worship, even if they were depictions of Christ and the Virgin Mary, both of whom have a high status in Islam.
In the Islamic world, we don't have monumental paintings in mosques. Although there is no prohibition in the Quran for painting, the worship of idols is not permitted because, this is one principle of Islam faith, which has no similarity with Christian belief, because God transcends all images. That's why in the Islamic world, monumental painting was prohibited.
When Mehmed the Conqueror converted this great cathedral into a mosque, he made sure that the images of Jesus and Mary, who Muslims revere, were treated with great respect. Today, Hagia Sophia is a museum. People of all faiths who visit it should be grateful to Mehmed for his solution to the problem of the images. Instead of destroying them, he plastered over the mosaics, so preserving them through the centuries. In the 15th century, the world was turning upside down. In 1453, when Mehmed the Conqueror captured Constantinople, he renamed it Istanbul, the city of Islam, and converted the great cathedral into a mosque. Islam seemed unstoppable. Yet, only a few decades later, Muslims would lose Granada, their last stronghold in Spain, and Christopher Columbus would sail for America. The loss of Spain and the expulsion from the beautiful lands of Andalusia has left a permanent scar on Muslims. Today, the Alhambra in Granada gives just a glimpse of how much Islamic rulers and their artists had accomplished.